Hello, everybody. My name is Jaekyung Willows. I am a doctoral candidate at the University of Texas at Austin. I am an Asian woman with dark brown hair and dark brown eyes, and I am wearing black blazer now. Today, I am going to present my synthesis analysis on culturally relevant transition planning for culturally and linguistically diverse students with autism spectrum disorder, intellectual or developmental disabilities as a part of the AIRP Research Day at Autism CARES 2023. This synthesis was conducted in collaboration with Dr. Terry Falcamata, Dr. Doris Baker, doctoral candidate Patricio Ehard at the University of Texas at Austin. Please allow me to use the term autism to refer to autism spectrum disorder, ID for intellectual disability, and DD for developmental disability, and CLD for culturally and linguistically diverse interchangeably throughout my presentation. I was motivated to study this topic, understanding the steady increase in racial and ethnic diversity in student demographics in the United States. Therefore, the knowledge about the influence of culture in the perception and interpretation of disabilities is very important to all stakeholders to support CLD students with disabilities to transition them to adulthood successfully. Cultural impact transition to adulthood-related decisions. However, barriers in participation in the transition planning for CLD families of children with disabilities have been reported in research studies. For example, Hispanic students with autism were shown less likelihood to receive inclusion services in mainstream coursework, and they passed fewer graduation tests than non-Hispanic students. So the main purpose of my synthesis was to identify influences of cultural factors in transition planning and outcomes for CLD students with autism, ID, and DD, and their families. Operational definition of cultural factors in the synthesis are beliefs, interpersonal styles, attitudes, language, and behaviors of individuals, referenced from Developmental Disabilities Act 2000, family roles, communication patterns, affective styles, values regarding personal control, individualism, collectivism, spirituality, religiosity, race and ethnicity. Betancourt Lopez, 1993. Method I used to do this synthesis were electronic database, journal search, Google Scholar, and ancestral search to locate manuscripts. 8 studies were selected from 4,538 studies. To be selected to my synthesis studies had to be a peer-reviewed empirical study published in English after the year of 2004, conducted in the United States, that included participants with transition age, CLD students with autism, ID or DD, or their families. A total of 1,770 participants were represented. Race and ethnicity makeup of the participants in the studies were white, Hispanics from various homelands such as Mexicans, Chicanos, and Colombians, Asians including Koreans, Chinese, and Vietnamese, and minimal number of African American participants were presented in the synthesis. Findings of the synthesis will be presented by transition domains. Independent living domain. The perceptions of the importance of independent living option varied by cultural groups. For example, Hispanic families viewed marriage for the reason for seeking independent living, as they see marriage as the marker of adulthood. CLD families plan to keep their children at home without assuming that society to take care of their children with disabilities. Cultural elements in independent living situations, such as ethnic diet, caregivers' language matching their home language, were important to Korean families. Functional life skills. CLD families have expressed their desires for their children to gain self-care skills, communication skills, using technology devices, sex education, and lessons on the boundaries of romantic relationships from school. In the area of parental involvement in transition planning, a language barrier in school involvement was reported across all 4 CLD groups in the synthesis. A hindering factor was CLD families felt cultural values, the differences were not respected by schools, and a lack of information about school-based transition planning was reported. Self-advocacy domain. Ethnic communities played a large role in providing support for CLD families, partly due to the parents' various English proficiency levels. A study reported from the synthesis that minority students received less related services, such as vocational counseling and occupational therapy from school than non-minority students in general. Employment domain. Immediate employment was not a high priority for Hispanic families. They rather have their children learn self-care skills and sex education. Parents' perception of the severity of disabilities of their children impacted employment decisions. Hispanic mothers expressed concerns about the safety of their children as job settings in the community. Findings of this synthesis can be summarized and as bidirectional ways. First part, the right-hand side box speaks about CLD families' needs, transition information in a timely manner, bilingual services, respect for differences in cultural perspectives, self-advocacy skill support. In response to these needs, the left-hand side column is school's response to CLD families' needs, timely information dissemination, systematic efforts to learn cultural differences, language services and support for undocumented CLD families. For the future research suggestion, practical steps for schools for building a bridge of cultural reciprocity, culturally relevant communication strategies, effective transition process for African American students with autism, ID or DD. Questions for feedback are, how can my work demonstrate more inclusive research practices? What other cultural factors can be examined to build culturally relevant transition plans for CLD families of children with autism, ID, or DD? Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I hope to see you at ARP Research Day in July at Washington, D.C.